Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam. Good morning. Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Today is Thursday, April 27, 2023. And as you know, a few months ago, I was messing up with the date. We're about 3-4 months strong that I haven't messed up the date in a while. So welcome to the Java Cafe, everybody. Listen, we have a very important topic that we're talking about this morning. And let me just go fix something with my camera here. Y'all know we fix and do stuff in real time. So let me just fix it real quick because I don't like how this green is looking. Okay, I think that's a little okay. I think that's a little bit better. All right, there we go. But in all seriousness, I don't know how many of you have noticed that over the past couple of months, gambling apps advertisement for sports betting that was recently approved in Massachusetts. Those ads and things are all on social media. There are vehicles in our community that are driving around advertising the sports betting apps. And I shared some stuff on Monday when we were talking about Victor coming on. He'll give some clarity, but presumption is that, they give you this little sign up bonus. In order for you to place a bet or to get your reward, you have to put in presumably a debit card. You place your bet, you lose. Do they take money away from? Are you going on the app to try to get that money back and keep losing? There is a term called problem addiction. We often talk about addiction with substances and food and retail therapy. But we're going to have a conversation this morning with Victor Ortiz from the Office of Problem Gambling, which is a part of the Addiction Services Department at Department of Public Health. I have known this young man for close to 30 years. And back in the day when you all saw me, and I still every once in a while throw on the bow tie, it was from hanging out with this brother. So without further ado, I would like to present to some and introduce to others Mr. Victor Ortiz from the Department of Public Health. And really, I ask you all to do this almost every day, but we in Black and brown communities need to have this conversation because, we see folks with the scratch tickets and whatnot. We see this in our community growing up, but are folks addicted? Let's have this real convo. Brother Victor, who I for years have affectionately called him, and so you might hear me refer to Brother Victor. But it is good to see you, man. And you talk about knowing me for 30 years. You look about 30. What's up, brother?
Yeah, hey man, good morning, James, man. It's so good to see you, man, and so good to be here, man. And I'm so glad that we got a chance to connect on this topic. So I'm looking forward to it, man.
Finally, and I will name Victor that years ago, when you saw this coming down the pike, you were like, yo, James, this is going to hit our community, da, 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 da. Yeah. And we're here. We're here.
Yeah. We're here, man. And the fact is, if I can go a little back,
well, first, greet the folks. Tell us a little bit.
Yes, good morning, everybody out there in the community, man. It's so good to see, just to be here, man. And I'm just really pleasured and honored, man, to have this opportunity, man, just to be here on this platform with you and to talk about this topic. So good morning to everybody, and so glad that folks are joining and able to just hang out and just be able to participate in this process with us, man. So I'm really glad for that. But a few years back, James, man, when this legislation was first passed, man, even before that, I started doing some work in this space with a local organization and was really doing a lot of work in the Springfield community. And and I because of my background and really doing work in addiction and mental health, and really thinking critically about this issue about gambling, I was really concerned then.
Yeah.
And that's going back to 2010, man. So we're talking about years back, about what this introduction of casinos was going to do to communities. You know what I'm saying? And so I was concerned then, because of the condition that we talk about, whether it's in Springfield, whether it's in Lawrence, whether it's in Boston, whether it's in any of our communities, man, that we're challenged with significant health challenges. And so you fast forward that to today, when you're talking about sports betting, that's bringing a whole different level of stress into our environment. So there's a lot of concerns, man, and that we need to, really unpack to try to understand this a little bit better.
Let's unpack a little bit from your observation. And I may make some statements that folks will say, James, you're generalizing, and we're not a monolith of people. But in your experience, when you talk about this issue in Black and brown communities, what has been the response, and has it included, oh, that's not our issue, we don't deal with that? I'm just curious, because
Yeah.
I'll be honest, when we talk about addictions and the impacts of poverty, health disparities, and whatnot, problem gambling doesn't typically come in as a entry point of huge concern.
Yes,
It
that's
is
true.
now, because then you got the whole fiscal impact, your personal finances. And so can we just talk a little bit about how important it is for Black and brown folks to pay attention to a couple of scratch tickets a week,
Yeah.
then it's 10, and then now you download the app, and let's go there.
Yeah, so here let's talk about what the data tells us, because I think it's
Yes.
important to kind of really, like, do the, as we do at DPH, man, is really lay the groundwork with data first, right? And separate, facts from just speculation. We know that over 95% of people who have a gambling disorder, and that is the sort of the clinical criteria and the DSM of folks who have a gambling disorder, over 95% have had a substance use disorder or mental health disorder prior to the onset of a gambling disorder.
Okay.
So now let's unpack that a little bit, because I think this is, really important, right? So when we think about mental health, right, we understand that in our communities specifically, there's significant disparities and challenges around mental health when it comes to Black and brown communities. And so, and especially when you add the trauma element on top of that, as it relates to gun violence and everything else, we're a traumatized people. That's, we can say that.
Yes.
So, so from my clinical observation, man, what happens often is, because of the mental health and which is really the underbelly of it all, substance abuse or the use of substance becomes a coping mechanisms to kind of really, really deal with some of the underlying trauma issues or underlying mental health issues. And so gambling is also an outlet, another expression of an addiction. So whether we're talking about drugs, alcohol, or gambling, we know that they sort of run together. And so that what really drives that in most cases is, what's underneath that is really mental health related issues. And we can really look at that from our folks and understand the devastation and the challenges that our people have in regards to mental health. So that's a fact. So now the second part of that fact is that when we look at problem gambling or gambling disorder, I'm going to use those terms interchangeably, but we know that people of color are disproportionately impacted by problem gambling. That's a fact.
Yep.
But here's the third piece that's really at the center of our office. The field of gambling, the work that is happening all over the country, both in research and services, has historically been disconnected from the community experience of gambling and people of color. So when we talk about our communities and why is it not there and why is it not talked about and why are the services not there, it's because we have to acknowledge the fact. As my father taught me as a little boy, we can't cover the sky with our hand. We got to speak facts. And the facts is that this whole work that has happened in this space for years has been historically disconnected from the community experience of gambling and people of color. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change. We're trying to trailblaze a new path here, and the opportunity that we have in Massachusetts, especially for our communities.
Absolutely. When we talk about Black and brown communities, in those stats or data, does it outline any demographic around race, ethnicity, or age of that you mentioned the 95% have past history of mental health or substance use issues. Are there any demographics in as far as race, gender, age?
Yeah, so some of the, again, because of space, and I think it's important to note that this is a space that's been grossly underfunded for decades. I think when you add up the total dollars that exist for problem gambling service in the country, is like $70 million. Yeah, it's extremely, and the majority of that money goes into treatment.
Okay.
But the fact is that in Massachusetts, we because of the legislators had the vision when when they introduced the casino gambling, they created an opportunity to address the mitigation of those of the issue, and allocated significant resources that our office manages in order to address the issue. So we're in a different situation in Massachusetts with different set of opportunities here. But when we look at the demographic, what we know is that men gamble earlier. Men gamble more than women in context of earlier in age, right? So we know that more men gamble than women in regards earlier in age. We know that the younger that people start to gamble, the later it becomes a problem in people's lives later on in their lives. And so we also, again, in regards to communities of color, although we know that people of communities of color are disproportionately impacted by gambling, the specification of that we're not clear on, right? There's still more research to understand the nuances of why and how come. Now, I have some theories around that as to why that is, based on my many years of doing this work. And I believe that devastation has to do with what we understand in public health. It's really centered around the social determinants of health. And I think that when we look at that, we know that from other data sets that over 95% of health outcomes are rooted in the social determinants of health, right? So so health outcomes are not based on your genetic code, but it's based on your zip code, man, and where you live and where you're born and where you're raised. And so I believe that the whether it's gambling, whether it's substance abuse or other issues, it's really rooted in those social determinants, man, and really trying to change those conditions so that our people can be on a trajectory of health and wellness and moving forward. And that includes gambling.
That is, Victor, beforehand, we talk about social determinants of health. I was just learning about them back in my days when we were at Rocks Comp together. So the pandemic, we hear this often, exacerbated what we
Yeah.
know.
Mhm.
And the pandemic probably had influence on all types of addiction. Though you may not be a problem gambling specialist, you have worked in the field of addiction for many, many years. And
Yes.
I would presume that some of the traits, behavior transcend no matter what the where people fall, where that addiction demonstrates itself. Can you, with where you can, and I'm making a disclaimer that you're not a clinician, every situation is different. What are maybe some telltale signs
Yes.
that folks are moving from, a little $20 once a week, or I didn't get the
Yeah.
scratch ticket, throw it away, and moving to where you might need to ask yourself, am I addicted? And if you're
Yeah. No.
asking yourself that, you more
Yeah.
than go ahead, sir.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. And I'm a social worker by trade,
Okay.
by trade, right?
Yeah.
Um, so some of the telltale signs is that if people are gambling more and more, that you see your increase in your bets and you're chasing your losses, that's a telltale sign. If you are foregoing activities in your family or in the communities, and you're spending more time in isolation, gambling, or pain, putting more time and energy into that, that's a that's a sign that if you feel anxious or dysregulated as it relates to your gambling, and you're feeling those kind of sentiments, that might be a telltale sign that you might have a problem with gambling. And so those, and again, you mentioned it earlier, James, and I think it's important to know, many years ago, the DSM reclassified gambling disorders within substance abuse. So the same traits that you see, the same biology elements that you see in substance abuse is also in within gambling. And so many folks would theorize that gambling, whether we're talking about drugs, whether we're talking about alcohol, whether we're talking about gambling, it's an expression of the underlying, which is it's an addiction.
Okay.
And so what happens often in our systems, and this is where it becomes it becomes challenging. Oftentimes in our systems of practice, we do work in a segregated way. We treat drugs, we treat alcohol, we treat nicotine, we treat gambling. And what we should do is move into a space where we're integrating all of these things, because, from our engagement at the community level, people, gambling and problem gambling doesn't sort of manifest alone, doesn't travel alone,
Yep.
and doesn't exist alone, right? It exists, and people are experiencing multiple things at the same time.
So it's interesting to hear that, Brother Victor, because we do some partnership with one of the health entities here. We've talked about substance use, and we talk about mental health basically every Monday. And so I really, where the community can be in support. There's wonderful new leadership, Dr. Robbie Goldstein there at DPH, where we can help advocate for that model of a sort of a all-encompassing framework around addiction, because more than likely you named four or three: gambling, alcohol, substances.
Yeah.
As you said, they don't travel alone. So if you're dealing with alcohol, you may be dealing with some other substance. If you're dealing with gambling, you may be dealing with alcohol. And so if you address the underlying, as you said, let me ask you, when you talk about addressing the issues, you talk about that just like there are disproportionate impacts when it comes to social determinants of health, how equitable are the services and those that are offering the services to Black and brown people dealing with this? Because we know you're a social worker. To get somebody to a point to get into treatment, they get into treatment, get in a session. And this is such a cliche sort of word these days, but if they're not culturally competent,
yeah,
and that person's trying to talk to them and it doesn't work out, they may leave and go out and never go back into service. And so where has DPH valued culturally competent, equitable, and I know you guys don't provide the exact service, but you contract out.
Yeah.
How are you guys ensuring that, and this is a new space, how are you guys ensuring that there are the proper providers and caregivers to respond to this addiction?
Well, let me say, James, it's a great question. And, when I first started in this space in 2016 at DPH, I came with a specific goal in mind. And I remembered the first thing that we set out to do was to think about gambling, not in isolation, but really to think about gambling and the integration of problem gambling and related issues. We also set out the goal of not just thinking about the individual, but thinking about communities, right? And thinking about, because the conversation was happening throughout the state, was what's going to be the impact on gambling, the expansion of gambling on individuals. And we changed the narrative and said, let's think about what's going to be the impact of casinos on communities.
Yes.
So that's a whole different conversation. So now, when you talk about this whole cultural element of it, let me just say that we are explicit in our office as it relates to equity. And if you look at our materials, look at our website, all the things that we do is all centered. But let me give you some concrete examples. The first thing that we did and that we do that's centered to our office is that we've engaged over 2,000 individuals at the local level of community engagement, in partnership with many organizations, to really help us inform the initiatives. So we are deeply rooted in the community as far as engagements. We do an annual stakeholder listening session that it's now 7 years strong, that we've engaged folks in the Springfield community, in the Everett community, and surrounding communities as part of our equity strategies to inform our initiative. The other thing is, not to get in the weeds of things, but we make sure that all the procurements that we have, these are public records, right? All of our procurements have equitable mentions and standards and expectations. And so so all of our services, we went from a $1 million office to $14 million. We went from, one agency that was doing the service to over 20 agencies. And if you look on our website and you look at the service, including our annual report, we're explicit about equity, because when we talk about equity, we also got to unpack that too. Because I'm too old, man. I've been doing this a long time. I'm not interested in tokenism. I'm not interested in surface equity. I'm interested in equity. And so what does that mean? That means that we have to have some difficult conversations to change systems, change the balance of power, and really empower our communities to really be empowered to do this work. And that's the mission that we're on.
Victor, one of the things that we also want to do, and I want to have it queued up, is when we talk about issues like this, I always want to have resources toward the end.
Yes.
And so is one of the things that I've looked up right now, there is the helpline, the 1-800-327-5050. Now that is, it's marketing. I'm looking at the site there. Substance is very prominent in the marketing, but is this also the number where people can call for gambling addiction services as well?
Say about that. Yeah. So, if anybody's experiencing a problem with gambling, have a question of whether it's a loved one, whether you're a family member who has a concern about a loved one that you're concerned about, or you're a clinician or you're a provider who has a concern about your client and you're looking for resources, or you're looking for any person who's struggling, can visit our helpline. It's 1-800-327-5050. But let me tell you about a little bit about this helpline. A few years ago, about 3 years ago, we integrated the problem gambling helpline with the substance abuse helpline.
Okay.
And so if you call the 1-800-327-5050 number, you can press 1 for problem gambling, 2 for substance abuse. But here's the key, James, and this is about really thinking about equity. We screen every substance abuse caller in Massachusetts is screened for problem gambling through the new initiative. And so we have now screened over 20,000 substance abuse callers for problem gambling.
And how many out of the 20,000 identified?
Yeah. So that number the data is very small in regards to those who identify as problem gambling, but we're working through that process to figure out how we can do that even better. And I think a lot of it is because it's new to people. It's a new element for folks who are in the substance abuse space, about this culturation of problem gambling within addiction. And so we're going through that process right now and evaluating that. But we do get a significant number of folks who either are identifying as having a problem with gambling, but at minimum, they're getting education. You see what I'm saying? So when they're calling, there's a conversation, there's a real conversation that's happening in regards to the substance abuse person who's experiencing substance abuse, that they at least be made aware about gambling. So that's an evolution that's happening. But that helpline has been a major success so far, and it's been in existence. The new helpline has been in existence now for 3 years, and it's a model about this integration that I talk about.
I mean, the integration is so needed because it stops duplication of services, and we won't get too deep into that.
Well, listen, we reduced the cost of that when we launched this out. We were spending, in the old format, we were spending about $400 something per call.
Okay.
We reduced that from $400 to less than $100, and used the cost savings to expand it. It is fully bilingual.
I was going to ask, were there other languages?
Fully bilingual in English and Spanish.
Okay.
And coming soon, we'll be sort of incorporating 4 Asian languages on that helpline as well.
Okay. That is definitely good to hear, because that's a good sign of equity as well. I want to back up a little bit, Brother Victor, because there is, and shout out to your office for kind of refocusing or dually focusing on the community impact, because case scenario, we know that you said men gamble more. We're talking about Black and brown folks. 28-year-old Black male, just got married, got a 2-year-old at home, somehow got caught up in the sports betting, stressed out because they're not winning, they're chasing the losses.
Yeah.
One of the things I was surprised you didn't name as one of the signs of addiction is you're not paying your bills.
Oh yes,
because
that's one.
that's a major. And so when you talk about the mental health impact now, or the mental health impact on the community, that dad is dealing with their issues. I'm sure that it's coming up somewhere with the spouse and
Mhm.
whatnot, either the isolation, guilt, not wanting to be bothered, maybe drinking, maybe smoking a little bit more weed or whatever. And so that does have a impact on the community, because at the worst case scenario, let's say that with this addiction, we're talking mental health, that this young man has dealt with issues of domestic violence.
Yep.
And so now you have a mom, a child impacted, the family, the community. And so I think it is definitely important that that you guys stay focused also on that community impact, because, and we were going to talk about the risk. I've named a few, but from your experience as a social worker and in this space, what are the risks if this goes unaddressed?
Yeah, so the data tells us that for every person that's experiencing a problem with gambling, it's estimated that about seven to I think 7 to 10 people are impacted either directly or indirectly by that person's experience around the problem with gambling. So when you talk, and so what I refer to that's the ripple effect, right? That
Yeah,
that
yeah.
ripple
Yep,
effect
yep,
that
yep.
happens. And so, and our engagement of the community, we've heard this from community members. It's this really multi-layer experience that people are experiencing, whether they're experiencing themselves or being impacted by someone else's gambling at home or whatever the case might be, and that whole ripple effect that happens. And that's why it's important that we take a community approach to think about this issue, and how do we mitigate the harms associated with gambling, because there's many other issues that are going on. And so it's that's why we're very adamant that when we talk about this topic, that we're not just talking about gambling in isolation, that we're talking about gambling in the intersectionalities of problem gambling and related issues, whether we're talking about mental health. You talk about domestic violence is another issue that comes up. Suicide, more people commit suicide related to gambling than any other addiction, any other addictive disorder, right? High rates of suicide. So in my expertise, or just my experience, gambling has this profound ripple effect in so many other areas, but yet it's still unknown in our communities, right? It's not talked about,
And that's
but major, major, major ripples. And so now with the sports betting element, it's just adding another layer to an environment that's already sensitive and vulnerable to this issue.
Let me ask you a question. I know you don't know. And again, you're representing DPH. And so, but from what in your research, or like if you sign up for the app, they get you hooked. Miss Teresa was saying they give you $200. Typically, by the
Yeah.
time you're able to cash out, you're hooked. Um, is the only risk of loss in their placing the bet? Um, let's say somebody places a $50 bet and they lose. The way it's set up, are there withdrawals that are automatically coming out the account, or your loss is in the fact you lost that 50, that's it, and now you may spend another 50 trying to chase that 50 you lost? I know you don't know maybe particular how the apps work, but I've been saying that that is a risk. If you're putting your debit card, it gets very interesting. And so it's a very
Yeah.
informal. I know you may not have the whole answer, but
Well, let me say this. I've heard from many folks that are concerned about what's happening with the apps and the advertisement. I've heard from folks in recovery who have been really triggered by this environment. Many folks who are either in recovery for substance abuse and or um, problem gambling. I just came back Friday. DPH. We had a really large recovery conference that happened this past Friday, and heard from many folks in recovery who obviously know the work that I do and that we do. Pull me to the side and say, Victor, man, can I holler at you, man, and talk to you about how concerning, how triggering it is, and for them to be in recovery, even from opioids and or substances, and just be triggered by the advertisement, right? And because again, these things run together. In regard and also heard from parents. I've heard from parents and loved ones who are concerned about their kids exposed to these to these advertisements. So there are concerns, and I would say that I don't know the full details in regards to the apps and all that stuff, but I would tell you that there are folks who are concerned about not only the amount of advertisement and what is happening in this space, but also the messaging within those in the context of this whole, you bet $5 and you get 200. And I think what's missing here is, and we're working with our partners at the Mass Gaming Commission and sharing with them sharing with them our perspective. But for people like us and for people that experience great devastation and poverty, that messaging is internalized differently, right? And I think that's missing. That is missing in the conversation. And so we hope that the value that we bring as the Department of Public Health, that we continue to infuse the conversations so that folks can take a closer look at these things.
From your knowledge, and again, there's relationship, and I'm trying to balance that you're in the formal role, but these, similar to cannabis, there is a certain tax, and that presumably some of that money goes into prevention and whatnot.
Yeah.
I'm not going to name entities, but these entities and app owners and whatnot in that legislation somewhere, are they legislated, or are there conversations going on about them putting money back into communities with a specific target? Because I'm looking at some of those that are purposely partnering to endorse. I'm looking at some of the cadence of the ads on social media. Most of them are Black men.
Mm-hmm.
And so are you aware of either the commission or you all, because from 1 to 14 million is definitely good, but are these agencies helping you get from 14 to 20 so you can make more of an investment and maybe spread beyond, and you're not doing just gambling, but be able to enhance what you're doing? Is there anything in the legislation there?
Yeah, so let me just say that first of all, the legislators, man, they have been really great in the context of working with the Department of Public Health and ensuring that we have the resources necessary. And I think it's important to know that, it's important for us to have firewalls and sort of division of labor here. And
Yes, sir.
so that's why it's imperative that these resources that are allocated in the legislation continue to be at the Department of Public Health for a whole host of reasons. One is because our approach is what I believe is necessary to mitigate harms associated with gambling.
Yep.
And it's important to have that firewall between the Department of Public Health and the industry, so that we can have sort of this very authentic, genuine observation and response to these issues. And so, and transparent. But in regards to resources, James, we put out a external facing budget document every single year.
Okay.
In our office. It's on our website. We made it a priority to ensure, because we strongly believe that we stand by the community, and the community has a right to know how we're spending the money, where that money's going. We put out an annual report that's on our website. We made that a priority, and I'm thankful to the administration at DPH who supported that initiative going a few years back to ensure that that is happening, because this trust fund, that where you talk about the resources, the legislators created this public health trust fund that allows for some of the gambling taxes to go into it to mitigate harm. And so that's obviously facilitated by DPH. It's important that DPH continues to facilitate those resources. But the fact is that we spread those dollars out in the community and multiple initiatives that we have going on, and have some other ones that are coming up. But we are committed to ensuring that those dollars go to the community.
Absolutely. And if at any point we find out either from you or others that the legislators are looking to move that line item to somewhere outside of a public health framework, we'll do what we need to do. And let's not wait action. Let's not wait until if and when that happens, but give a call to your legislator, state rep now and say, hey, I just want to say that I'm calling to lend my support that gambling addiction services resources always stay with DPH, just to make sure if there's any inkling of it going to somewhere else. One of the other things I wanted to ask, two more questions before I let you go, is what is it that a individual can observe, and you're probably floating between your social work community and your experience there at the office, but how does a loved one, a caregiver, a spouse, a child, a parent, that little piece about the young people, so all you got to do is click that you're 18,
Mhm.
and 16-year-olds know how to lie and click that they're 18.
Yeah, but it's also the exposure, right? It's the exposure. Like, I think I was talking to somebody on a college who is on a college campus, and they had called me, and they were talking, and they're like, even though the legislation, you can't advertise the the sports betting advertisement can't be on college campuses, but if you're riding the T, and you're a college student, you're in Northeastern, or you're at these colleges and the surrounding elements, you see it, what I'm saying, or you're going out on Friday night to go have to do whatever to hang out or whatever, you see these ads, so they're indirectly being sort of advertised or whatever. So these are things um, that can be devastating to people. So young people are, just by the mere fact of just seeing these ads, are being impacted. So we know that there's going to be some impact, and so what I advise people, if you have a concern, if you're somebody in your family, call the helpline. Call the helpline. They're trained, they're skilled, they have the resources that can guide you. And lastly, if any questions that anyone has, call our office. Call our office directly. Send me an email directly to my email. It's victor.ortiz@mass.gov. Send me an email. My role here is to serve the public, and that's what I do, and that's what we do. We have a great team back at the office. The other thing I want to mention, James, man, if I can plug this in, is that
Please.
as part of this continued promotion of equity, we have an upcoming stakeholder listening session that's happening on June 20th and 21st for the communities of Everett and the surrounding communities in Boston, as well as in Springfield. So if you are interested in being part of this work, come check us out, man. Visit our office, our website. It's opgs.org or .gov, and come check us out and join us at our stakeholder listening session, because the more voices that we have at the table, the better. This is about truly representing equity and empowering the community to really be a part of this work.
I just want to make sure I got everything right. OPGS.gov.
Yep, it's the
All right.
office, the Massachusetts office, the Massachusetts Office of Problem Gambling Services.gov.
And then brother Victor's email address is here. Please email him. If you want to get more detailed information, he can point you. He does not provide direct services.
No,
but
we don't provide direct service. We have a whole team of folks that provide. We have over 22 outpatient treatment programs. We have prevention programs at the community level. So we have a whole host of resources. But if you visit our website, you will see it. And if you don't get what you're looking for, call us directly. Send me an email, and somebody on my team will get back to you. Definitely.
Brother Victor, I appreciate you, and so does the audience as well. It's just interesting that you refer to what we deal with as a people. All the pandemic has exacerbated, and we still haven't seen the full impact. Though we're approaching this endemic stage, we still haven't seen the full impact of COVID in our community, and that partnered with, and I think it was Kenya that said, these app owners are very crafty. They're not trying to lose money. The goal is always to take your coins by any way possible. And we, as you said, because we've been downtrodden and dealing and trying to fight up through systems and structures that are designed to keep us down, if something is presented as an opportunity, someone said you put down 5 and you're going to get, I think you said it, you put down 5, you're going to get 200. That's not a guarantee. And so I just appreciate you naming, moving in, and being aware of the full comprehensive scope of the individual, and then the impact on the what I call the subperipheral and the peripheral of those around them that are dealing with addiction, the children, the spouses, the family. God forbid it interferes with your place of employment. And you know, so it we need to continue this conversation. So please keep me aware how we can be helpful, and if anything needs to be done around, you know, budget season, I think for the state is going to be coming up soon. So if there's any dip in that 14 million, well, you maybe can't let us know, but listen,
Well, Jay, let me say
if
that.
you need us, you
Well,
reach out.
you've been a brother, man, and a supportive man of myself and this work for a long time, and I'm deeply grateful, man. And again, man, I'm thankful to everyone who's on this platform that took time to listen, man. And I'm a son of Roxbury, you know,
All day.
born and raised on Dudley
All
Street.
day.
Yeah, all day, you know, born and raised on Dudley Street, and so I'm grateful to be doing this work. And I'm grateful for folks who took the time to really listen and participate in this process.
Absolutely. And there we definitely have a high rate of what I call after watch. And so, you know, folks are back at work now and they can't come in at 9 a.m. But even in the after watch, folks, go to the comments. You can see the number that's up here to make sure that you have the information that you need from Brother Victor. And again, man, I appreciate you. I really appreciate you taking the time. And for the years, Brother Victor, that you've been naming this, being able to see the handwriting on the wall. And so now we need to help amplify that. And again, this this platform is here to help.
Thank you, brother, for all that you do, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. And please give Dr. Goldstein, tell him your healthy Java said hello.
I'll make sure I'll do that.
All right, Brother Victor. Thank you.
Care.
Appreciate you. Love you, brother. Thank you.
Likewise, brother.
Listen, folks, make sure that you share this with some folks and help get this information out there, because you don't want to find out you're addicted when it's too late. We know when we're dealing with something. If we have to ask ourselves and we're doing research on it, we're looking it up. If it says, you know, 99, you're not addicted, and 100 means you're addicted. Y'all know we sometimes at 99.8. So the impact that he talked about. Let me close out with let me just share a couple of things with you. Please don't forget, as I've been mentioning the past few days, that 3 weeks from, no, a month, let me look, Jesus Lord, April, about 3 or 4 weeks from this coming Saturday, we are going to have the Your Healthy Java Health Fair taking place at the Thelma Burns Building, 575 Warren Street, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. I'm going to reach out to Brother Victor and see if they can have a table there at the health fair. But we're going to be at the Thelma Burns Building on Saturday, May 20th for a health fair. You don't hear about these that much anymore, so please make sure you plan to come out. You will be able to get your blood drawn and test for diabetes. The vaccination will be there. The MGH van will be there. We're going to have a panel. There's going to be some refreshments. Might be getting some entertainment. Definitely going to have a DJ. And activities, and we hope to have more, anywhere from 25 to 30 resource tables, which will result in about 35 to 45 different type of resources available centered around health and wellness. So please make sure you plan to come on Saturday, May 20th. Also, don't forget, on Wednesday, June 21st, we're going to have the Java with Jimmy on the waterfront cookout that's taking place on June 21st. We are still waiting to let you guys know where this is going to be. But it's going to be a cookout. We got food trucks, entertainment. We're going to have a panel. There's going to be fun, activities. There is going to be dancing. And June 21st is, if you came to the ICA last year, this one is it's a family-centered event for the first part of it. We're going to have activities for young people. After school programs will be closing out, getting ready for the summer. Some of them are going to come over in the afternoon. And then in the first part of the early evening, we'll have our panel, and we'll get ready to go home after that. So June 21st, 3:30 to 8 p.m. All right, keep that in mind. I'm once again going to show the services where you can get in touch. Yes, Leslie, the cookout is going to be awesome. KB, I will definitely send you the flyer. Absolutely. Please get them there as well. But don't forget that the number for the helpline for addiction services is 800-327-5050. Also, if you want to email Brother Victor for any more details or share with him ideas or suggestions around services, or have need of a service that they may not offer as of yet, he said get in touch with him. And the website is opgs.gov for you to go and get more information there. So I appreciate all of you being in today. Today's my Friday, so I won't see y'all till Monday. Couple of things for next week. On Monday of next week, we have Dr. Brandy, and we're going to have our Mental Health Mondays. On Tuesday, Your Healthy Java, and we're going to talk senior care and palliative care on Tuesday with Your Healthy Java. On Wednesday, Mayor Michelle Wu will be with us for her monthly appearance. And on Thursday, the 4th, Reynolds Graves, who is a young man working to make sure that we support candidates of color, candidates to share our values. He's launched a political action committee, and he's going to come and tell us about it on Thursday. And so that's the lineup for next week. And then a special edition next Friday at 9 a.m. The Massachusetts Department of Education Secretary will be here with us to tell us what's going on with the Department of Education, what they're working on, and different things like that. So please plan to tune in next week. The week after that, we got some great programming for you. On the 15th, we'll be making an announcement. And so, yeah, we got some things coming up, everybody. Miss Teresa said something about 8:30 tonight. No, not 8:30 tonight. I don't know what that is, but no, nothing tonight. Y'all, there is not another event for Java with Jimmy until May 20th. And then a month after that, June 21st. Those on-site events be stressful. All right. Thank you all for tuning. Oh, 8:30. So I have to, and I need to share this. Let me share this real quick as well, because I really wanted to be more intentional. And I'm actually going to put it on my page. There is a stakeholders meeting for community leaders, not community leaders, for the, if you consider yourself a stakeholder in attempting to try to prevent issues of violence, there is a meeting tonight. And I'm just trying to see, because I did download the flyer, but I will tell you at Prince Hall, I believe it's at 7 o'clock this evening. Hold on. I thought I downloaded it. I just want to give you guys the right time at Prince Hall and Grove Hall. All right, there it is. So why didn't it sync? So I could put it on the screen. But gun violence is a health crisis, community stakeholders solution to the street, Violence Forum 2023, tonight, April 27th at the William E. Reed Auditorium, 24 Washington Street in Dorchester. Light refreshments will be served. This is being sponsored by iHeartRadio, Harvard Street Neighborhood Health Center, and 365 Dad, and also 98.1, I believe, the Urban Heat FM. And so that meeting is taking place tonight at, I just looked at the time. Oh, shoot. 5:30 to 7:30, not 7 o'clock. 5:30 to 7:30 tonight at the William E. Reed, aka Prince Hall Auditorium in Dorchester. Meet me there. I will be there to support. And whoever planned this meeting, shout out to y'all. Because if the game's at 8:30 tonight, that means that we can leave the meeting and get home and watch the game. So, yes, Leslie, why did the Celtics lose the last game? What are you going to say to us? Or is that not a hypothetical? Are you getting ready to tell us a joke? Why did the Celtics lose the last game? Come on, Leslie, tell us. So I can get off of here and start enjoying my Friday. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Oh, she said not. She said this is not a laughing matter. I don't know. And I was out. And so I think some of the people, I know a lot of the people had never observed me watching a game down so close to the last minute like that. When I tell you I was up and down out of the chair, scratching my head, pulling my hat off, and just like, ugh. Y'all pray tonight so we can take it. All right. I saw that. I saw that. All right, folks, we will see you on Monday at 9 a.m. Have a great weekend, everybody. And we shall see you again Monday at 9 a.m. Don't forget May 20th. Don't forget June 21st. Don't forget next week, Dr. Brandy on Monday. Dr. Catalina. Oh, God, I forgot her last name. We're talking senior and palliative care on Tuesday. On Wednesday, the mayor on Thursday. Reynolds Graves, and on Friday, the Massachusetts State Department Secretary of Education will be with us. All right, you guys have a wonderful weekend, and we shall talk to you soon.